we've taken a look at some different communities. Now we're going to start to create our own. This is what our community will look like once it's finished. You can see that it is folded, but it is just a piece of paper. So it will lay flat in our folders when we put things away. You can see the tag board behind it is completely covered in front by grass. So we don't see any of that white paper. That's the first step we're going to be doing today, covering up our tag board and creating a grass background before we start building our structures. The first thing you need to do is write your name on the back of your strip. And then flipping it over, you'll see two folds, one that comes forward and one that goes back. It will create a Z shape. For now, just make sure you flatten the paper. The green strips that you will get should be the same size as your folded piece of paper. If it's a little short, it's okay. We can kind of cut it down or cover it up with one of our houses. Now, this doesn't really look like grass yet. To create a grass texture, we're going to use our scissors and cut fringe. And when you cut fringe, you don't cut all the way down to the edge of the paper. Cut about halfway and move your scissors down the line. Notice that I'm not cutting them too close together because I am going to be gluing them, and I don't want the paper to fall apart on me. Once you've cut your fringe, line up your grass with the bottom of your tag board, covering up as much of the white as possible. You can see mine's a little short, so I will fix that later. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I've lined it up right with the fold. I'm not sure, I can always fold the paper again and make sure that the grass is tucked inside the folded part of the paper. Do I need to put my glue all the way on my grass? No, you can see the grass is sticking up. If I put glue on the grass, I'm going to have a big, long, sticky line. So for this part of the project, we're actually going to put glue on the strip. This is what we want completely covered, so this is where the glue is going to go. Should I put one stripe of glue in the middle? No. I need to put them all along each of the edges. Think of it like you're making the back of a sticker. The back of a sticker is glued completely. It's sticky everywhere. We want this to be as sticky as a sticker. I'm lining it up before I press it down completely. And then I'm going to smooth it with my hands a couple times. You don't just want to smack it and go on to the next one. That doesn't work. Get my next piece of paper and measure it up. I'm going to do the same thing. Make my fringe going halfway down the paper. And then put glue on the back of my tag board, the front of my tag board. When it's nice and shiny, I'll know it's sticky enough to put my grass down. When your grass is finished, for now, turn your glue stick down, put your cap on, and put your hands in your lap so we can watch the next step. The next step we'll be doing involves making our buildings. You will have big trays of different kinds of papers. There will be some that are squares and rectangles and some that are thin strips. Which ones do you think we should pick for our building? We should pick the thicker ones because our buildings are going to be the biggest item in our picture. What do you think these thinner ones might be for? The thinner ones will be for doors and windows. I also need to pick something for the roof. Some of my roofs might be a triangle shape, like these, and some of them might have rectangles. This one is very fancy and it has a rectangle and a triangle on it. So when you figured out what color you want your first building to be, I have a white strip of paper right here, so I want my house to go right there so it covers up that white piece of paper. Should I put glue all over the back of this rectangle? No, you can see it sticking out halfway. If I put glue on the back, I'm going to glue my paper to the table. I don't want that. So I'm going to use my finger to make a note of how high it goes. You could even use a pencil and make a tiny little mark to remind yourself not to put glue above that little line. You can even see that line right there. That's how far I want my glue to go. It doesn't matter which side because your paper should look the same on both. I will put my glue all over the bottom part. And I'm making it like a sticker, sticky everywhere, especially along the edges. Alright, so I've decided I'd like a roof that is orange. I'd like a triangle. Is this a triangle? No, but it is a square. There's a very easy way to make two triangles out of a square. You hold it like a diamond, where there's a tip at the top and a tip at the bottom. I'm going to run my scissors right along one corner to the other. And now I've got two triangles. I can save the other triangle for later and use one triangle on my house now. Now here's where it gets tricky. If I just take my triangle and stick it right there, is there anywhere for me to put glue? No, they're not connected. When we glue our cities, we need to make sure that our paper overlaps. We need to have an overlapping piece. So I'm using my finger to make a note of where I want my roof to end. So right there, which means the glue is going to be in a strip right along the top of my building. If you're doing a thinner strip, you don't have to use your glue flat against the table. You can angle it to the side and you will get a thin line that's a little bit easier to control. I'm using it almost like a crayon where I'm coloring back and forth all the way one edge and the other. And then I'm going to lay my roof right on top and smooth it down. Now after every piece, I like lifting up my paper a little bit to make sure it's not glued on the back, and that when I stand this house up later, it's not going to flop over on me. So I'm not going to do any details right now. I'm just making the basic shapes of my buildings. So this one is finished. I'm going to move on to the next one. There's not a lot of space left here. I could make a small house, or maybe later I can put a tree or a bush, some other kind of detail. I need to think of this picture as 3 parts. And once I fold it again, you can see this part is pretty full. I don't think I'm going to be able to fit another building right next to it. So I'll move on to the middle section. Now let's say you have a rectangle, but you don't want your house to be this big. You want it to be a little thinner, something that looks like one of these buildings. Do you think that I should take my scissors and cut up the whole paper? No. I want to be able to use these scraps. Remember that we are recycling with this project. We don't want to waste a lot of paper. So I'm going to figure out just how wide I want my building to be. I want it to be this tall, but I want it to be about this wide. Make a little mark with my pencil and then cut along that line. You don't have to do all your buildings right at the very bottom of your paper. You might want to have your buildings a little higher up so there's room to put some extra grass later. I still have lots of space to put my glue. I don't want to have it where it's like this because then my building is going to flop over. Now on this building, I don't think I'm going to do a triangle. I think I'm going to do something a little simpler where I make a wider rectangle than the rectangle I'm using on my building. So I'm holding this strip up and kind of measuring with my eye how big I want the roof to be, and I'm making a mark. I'm not doing this in the middle of the strip, so I have to cut the whole thing out. I'm just making one mark, and then when I've cut out what I want, I have the rest of this strip that I can put back in the tray for other people to use. Notice that I haven't cut one thing before I've measured out where I want it to go and how big I want it to be. Please don't just take your scissors and start cutting paper up, because that is very wasteful, and that's kind of what we're learning not to do right now. I do have another triangle here I could use on this roof. I could make it do the same thing I did with the first one, or I could do something a little different, make my picture a little more interesting. I think I'm going to make this roof go sideways. Now if I overlap it forward, you're going to see some of that rectangle. So on this one, I'm going to have to use the back so I can still see the rectangle of my building. I'm testing out where everything is. I've got one building on the first section, two buildings on the second, and now I have one last section to do. I do still have that little piece of white over there, so I need to make sure I put something along that edge. It could be a building or it could be something else. I think I'm going to put that house right up against the edge, just like I did on the other side, so it hides any little piece right there. Very easy way to make a thin triangle. I'm going to find the middle of this strip, which is right about here. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then, right from this dot, I am going to cut from the dot up to the corner. And then on the other side, starting at the dot again, I'm going to cut up to the other corner. Now I have a long, thin triangle. Now I can still see my pencil line. I don't want to see my pencil line, so I want that to be on the back. Pencil lines should always face the back of the building. And I can save these for details or for friends who want to use them. Maybe on a tiny house. You know, I do have a lot of space here. Maybe I'll make a tiny house right here. So I know I want to use one of these little roofs. I can kind of hold it up and see how big my rectangle should be. Now this is a very, very tall house. I don't really want it to be that tall because I want it to be small. I'm going to cut this, let's say about in half. I'm finished with my glue, so I'm turning it down and I'm putting the cap on to make sure it doesn't dry out. And I will double check that all of my buildings can stand up with no problem.